and welcome to a long-awaited next episode of Cooking with Wine. This time, for the first time, we're actually cooking with wine. Tonight's dish is a classic French recipe done in a style you can do on a weeknight. Hear me out. I found this old recipe book by these two gentlemen, Curtis Weinstein and Mark Scarborough, who have a little 2-page recipe for coq au vin that doesn't take days and days of marinating and still tastes amazing. They give us options of things that you can serve it over as mashed potatoes, white rice, egg noodles, or even acorn squash. We prefer it with egg noodles, but we're out, so we're having it with rice. This dish begins, as any really yummy dish does, with the bacon. So we're frying up, this is 3 thick cut slices of bacon, and once they get nice and crispy, we'll take them out and put in the chicken. Now a recipe that I've been using calls for leg quarters. We're not particular to dark meat. We keep a lot of chicken breasts in the freezer, so that's what I had on hand when we first made the dish, and so that's what we continue to use. This dish was so amazing the first time we had it. I'm hesitant to make any major changes, so I've never used the mushrooms that it calls for. Instead of doing the onions with the garlic in the next step, I'm doing the onions separately so they can caramelize well in a stainless steel pan, instead of the mushrooms, which we deglaze with brandy. Now, the beauty of this recipe is that you get 1 good bottle of red wine. They suggest a Rhone, but the night I made this recipe, this is what we had. It was a Bordeaux, it was actual French wine, and it was just exceptional. So you put half of a bottle into the dish, and the other half you drink with the dish. So we'll be back in a moment when the bacon is all crispy. So our bacon is just about done. It's a little hard to tell because I've got this really good thick cut bacon and it's putting off all this amazing grease. But I think when we get this onto the paper towel, it'll crisp up a bit. So let me go ahead and do that. And then we'll put the chicken in here to cook in the bacon grease, because why wouldn't you? We have rough chopped our chicken into these larger chunks over here, and that will cook about 6 minutes aside. It doesn't have to be completely done, but I do like to get it almost done, just in case anything happens with the rest of the dish, and you need to make sure that the chicken gets done because that's important. So this is going to spit a little because of all that nice grease in there. So you get it in, and you want to make sure it doesn't stick right away. So move it around a bit. Get it all covered in that grease so it doesn't stick. In the recipe it says shake the pan, but I don't think that's going to do it just now, so move it around with the little wooden spoon here. Now we will let those suckers cook for a bit, and when those are done we take those out as well, and then we put the garlic in, so we'll be right back. Okay, so chicken is generally done when you can just cut it in half with a spoon and it's white on the inside, juices run clear. If you have large enough pieces, you just pick them up with tongs. These are a little smaller than we usually do, so I'm going to use the slotted spoon. Make sure the grease stays in the pot. Then we're going to put some garlic in here. It says a small clove. I prefer a large clove, so that's what we're doing. You can mince it yourself or buy it pre-minced. I don't think it makes a difference, except on the amount of time you spend in the kitchen. This is at a pretty medium-high heat here, so it only takes a minute to get that garlic done. Then you're going to put in 2 tablespoons of flour. Now, remember I told you that I deviated from the recipe here. The recipe will say that you put in the onions with this. I prefer to caramelize them separately because it gets a better job done, especially since we're not doing the mushroom part from the recipe. So you cook the flour until it's a nice brown color. Get it all incorporated with the garlic here. And then here's the part where the recipe gives a big warning about how to put out a kitchen fire. Because wine is alcohol. We're pouring alcohol into a very hot pan. So I would take precautions if you have say a gas stove where you have actual open flames, and maybe take the pot off of the heat before you put in the wine. But I've made this dish 3-4 times now and we've never had a problem, so I just go ahead and pour it in. Now what I'm doing here is I'm scraping off all those really yummy brown bits off the bottom to get them incorporated into the wine. Now, as soon as I'm done doing that, I'm going to add the spices. Now that is the one deviation I'm doing tonight that we haven't done before, is it calls for thyme, and I actually have fresh thyme this time, because I had another recipe this week that called for it, so I went ahead and just bought some fresh thyme. Now remember, when you use fresh spices, you need twice as much as you would dried. So normally it would just be 1 teaspoon of dried thyme. This is 2 teaspoons of chopped fresh thyme. And I didn't have fresh rosemary or celery seeds, so those are the dried portions. It's half a teaspoon of dried rosemary and 1/4 teaspoon of celery seed. You can buy celery seed in bulk. Just get a teeny tiny little bit to try it, see if you like it. I thought it was important enough for this recipe, I went ahead and bought a whole bottle of it, because I know I'm going to be making this over and over and over. So you don't have to spend a lot of money to get that ingredient in. The other one is a bay leaf. Now, we'll probably have some of these hanging around and don't know how old they are, if they're going to be still any good. I actually went and asked them at a local spice shop around here called Penzies, how do you tell if your bay leaves are still any good? Because it doesn't really smell like anything, right? She said if you break it in half, that's where you get the smell. So that's how you know your bay leaf is still good. So incorporate these spices, and then we're going to bring this to a boil, and then we're going to let it simmer for 30 minutes. Meanwhile, I'm going to melt 2 tablespoons of butter, and we're going to caramelize a small, I use sweet onions. You can use white onions, yellow onions, whatever you prefer. I always like the sweet onions. So let me get this up to boil, melt some butter, and we'll be back. So if you got your bacon crispy enough to crumble it by hand, go ahead and do that. If you still have these little chewy bits, You can chop them. So we've got our onions starting to caramelize. And then we'll get the chicken and the bacon back into the wine mixture. So that they can simmer together for about 30 minutes. So I'll put this back in. I'll give that a stir. Oh yeah, see how that's thickening up down there already? That's going to be a really nice sauce. Okay, so we will turn this down to lowish. And cover and let it do its thing while we continue to caramelize these onions. And we'll be back. So, our onions have some good color on them. And we are going to use the brandy to deglaze this pan. So you go ahead and set up. We're going to take the lid off of this because this is where it's going. So about 2 tablespoons of the brandy, or as much as you want. Again, that same precaution about alcohol and open flames. Maybe take it off the burner if you've got a gas stove. But just get up all that nice brown stuff off the bottom of the pan. That's butter and onion. It's amazing. And then we're going to incorporate the onions back in with everything else. Stir that in. Oh, if only you could smell this. That's looking beautiful. Actually, I'm not sure that's going to take the whole 20 minutes, but we'll let it do its thing for at least 15. And so we'll be back. Isn't my new microwave sound annoying? So that means our coq au vin is done, and it's a beautiful thick brown sauce with chicken in it. Now, don't forget to remove your bay leaves. I don't know the story behind bay, but it's a spice. You put the leaf in, it imparts its flavor to your dish, and then you remove it. You don't eat the bay leaf. Anyway, so I've plated up our rice over here, and you just put a generous portion of coq au vin over the rice. The cookbook that this came from is actually called Cooking for Two. And that doesn't hold true for a lot of their recipes, but this one it does, because there are never any leftovers of this dish in this house. So there's our bay leaf coming out. Remember that we broke it in half. And here's the other half. So, coq au vin in less than an hour. I mean, who could do better than that? So, Lulu, honey, really, I don't need a soundtrack. Anyway, thanks for watching, what is this, 7th episode of Cooking with Wine, Coq au vin? Have a drink on me.